Hey everybody, we're the Menschwarmers. I'm Jamie. I'm here with my co-host Gabe, who is currently finishing a handful of Sour Patch Kids.
What's
Gabe, how you doing?
I'm good. I mean, I'm just looking. You can hear me doing this. I believe these are kosher Sour Patch Kids.
Yeah, I think so. I know they don't have gelatin,
Yeah.
which is usually the standard.
Usually the
I mean,
standard.
at least kosher style.
Yeah, they don't seem to have any sort of like mishkiach written on them, but
Okay.
there's nothing in here that is not kosher, other than lacking the thing. So I know some of our listeners would consider that unkosher, but I don't. Have we discussed on this podcast as a quick end? We've got a lot to talk about, but you bring up an excellent point. What is your favorite kosher candy?
Oh, that's a good question. I actually went to the kosher candy store on Bathurst Street before my wedding because we had like a candy bar.
The
And we
kosher.
had
I
to
thought
like
you were going
go
to say the
get
kosher candy festival. We reported from the
yeah,
kosher
we had
candy festival.
as a vegetarian, the overlap with wanting kosher candies high because I want things without gelatin. But unfortunately, a lot of kosher stuff has fish gelatin, which is kosher,
But not
but
vegetarian.
not vegetarian. So it can be a little tricky that like kosher doesn't necessarily equate vegetarian. So that can be a bit of a problem. But I think that one of the candies we had was runts, which I'm a big fan of.
Yeah.
The hard fruit candies, especially the banana ones.
Yeah.
But glad to. What's your favorite kosher candy?
I'm a big fan of any sort of elite chocolate, elite
Sure.
flake bars.
I will say I'm also pretty partial to the Passover candied oranges.
Ooh, yes. Although,
Like the fake candied
do you
oranges.
eat the rinds? Are you supposed to eat the rinds of
Oh,
those?
absolutely, yeah.
So
That's the good stuff.
what a chocolate bar I used to have in Israel, and I would love for it to exist here. And you can get it at some certain kosher grocery stores. I don't want to put anyone on blast here, but it's the chocolate bar. It's an elite milk chocolate bar that has Pop Rocks in it. That's an adventure in your mouth.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
And
All right.
good Israeli chocolate.
Let's move on from Candy Corner. We have an exciting show for everyone today. It is June 7 as we are recording this, and tomorrow is the first day of the RBC Canadian Open, which is taking place at the Oakdale Golf and Country Club.
That's right. It's not just any RBC Canadian Open. It's a Jewish RBC Canadian Open.
Yeah, no free ads, but we're giving them that one. RBC, if you want to sponsor us, let us know. But the Canadian Open is taking place at Oakdale Golf and Country Club, which is a traditionally Jewish, or at least Jewish founded golf club. It is, just to go through the history of this a little bit. It is the place that Toronto Jews founded to play golf in when they weren't allowed to play at other clubs. Some other clubs, such as the Rosedale Golf and Country Club, which didn't really let Jews in until the last decade or so, and still it doesn't have very many. There is a long-standing history in Toronto of this sort of separation, I guess, segregation, restricted clubs that wouldn't let Jews in as members. They're, Toronto's proud. Toronto and the Toronto area has a number of country clubs that are, at least in their inception, were pretty Jewish, and some remain incredibly Jewish. Oakdale, Maple Downs, places like that. And these have, long been refuges for Jews to have a place to go play. Oakdale, when it was built, was sort of on the outskirts of the city, is now sort of centrally in the northwestern part of North York. I mean, it's sort of surrounded on all sides by, just suburban neighborhoods.
Yep.
But it, remains a club with a pretty Jewish identity. Not exclusive, obviously, not exclusively Jewish, but I would say it has a very strong Jewish identity.
Absolutely. Interestingly, and so we've talked about this in the past. We've talked about this on our show with both Lawrence Applebaum, the CEO of Golf Canada, and our, I guess, sister podcast's host, Rabbi Avi. That this is not actually, Oakdale isn't the first Jewish club to host the Canadian Open. I guess, it's a couple of times in the 1960s, both 64 and 69, the Canadian Open was held at Pine Grove, which is sort of the Montreal version of Oakdale, which is the Montreal Jewish community founded in the 50s, sort of as a response to have been excluded and restricted from joining all of the other clubs. So between Pine Grove,
then in more than 50 years, it's been 50 years since the Canadian Open has taken place at a Jewish country club.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a few PGA events here and there, in the States at country clubs that have Jewish affiliations or again, Jewish histories and things like that. But this is, pretty exciting. It's the first time that Oakdale is hosting it. And I was lucky to have a chance to sit down with both Molly Jagroop, who is the general manager at Oakdale, and Mark Sadowski, who is the immediate past president, sort of from the member side, and talk to them about the things that the club has had to do to get ready, why they are hosting the Open now, why it's time for them to do it. And that was a really fun conversation and interesting to hear their perspectives, both in terms of, what's involved in just making a golf tournament happen. These things are huge undertakings, and hear more about the club's history as well. So please, stick around for that interview. I think it's a lot of fun. Sorry, go ahead.
I know I'm really excited to hear it. I wasn't available for the interview, so Jamie took this one solo. And so I'm super excited to hear how the interview goes. As you mentioned, it is people at country clubs seem to be, I would say, reticent to do this sort of thing. It's a big disruption to their usual programming, but I think, the leadership at Oakdale saw it as a really big opportunity for them to have an experience and sort of bring the club to the forefront. And, to get into our first topic of the week, suddenly the biggest story in all of sports is taking place squarely at Oakdale Country Club, the Oakdale Golf and Country Club, the Jewish golf club in Toronto.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing that, just yesterday, there was a quote unquote merger announced between the PGA and LIV Golf. And I just want to get right off the bat here. Merger is a nonsense phrase. It is not a merger. It is an acquisition.
Yes.
LIV Golf is not on any equal footing with the PGA and never has been. No elements of LIV Golf in terms of like the 54 hole structure, the team system is going to make it into the PGA. Maybe some of the places where they've played will become PGA events, but it's not a merger. It's not like the AFL and the NFL. LIV Golf is this upstart from the last couple of years that was funded by the Saudi Public Investment Fund to compete with the PGA, and the PIF is investing, aka buying the PGA Tour. That's the entirety of it.
Yep.
It is not truly a merger in any real sense, but it is happening. This is a great lesson that money always wins. At the end of the day, the money is going to be the only thing that matters. And I think it's interesting. It's interesting from a Jewish perspective as well. I think there's some general angles on this, but there's a Jewish angle here too.
Totally. It's not, traditionally speaking, the Saudi Arabian government has not been particularly kind to the Jewish people. And nor have they been particularly kind to criticism, which is something the Jewish people are able to provide in spades to anyone.
Yeah. And I mean, look, maybe this is a period of detente. Certainly we are seeing the opening of relations between Saudi Arabia and Israel in a meaningful way, which I think most people would see as a positive thing. But I don't see that it's being reflected by any sort of internal easing of repressive policies on the Saudi side.
So far,
anything but the most lip servicey ways. And
so far, the
this
best
is sort of outside of our depth.
The best we got from a sports perspective is that wrestler Goldberg was able to wrestle in Saudi Arabia, where he had been to Israel, so previously he would not have been allowed in the country.
Right.
And now he was able to wrestle. Goldberg and his, the other sort of Jewish wrestling impresario, Paul Heyman, were both in Saudi Arabia. But beyond that, there's not a lot in terms of golf. I mean, so far.
In terms of golf, I mean, I don't think it's going to affect the Jewish golfers who play on the PGA Tour in any meaningful way. They'll be allowed to play wherever they need to play. Maybe there will be some jokes made if some big Saudi investment ends up putting huge amounts of money in Max Homa's pocket when he wins a tournament. But whatever. I mean, I think there's the Jews have the same concerns that lots of people do about Saudi investment in these sorts of things. And I guess we'll have to see where it goes. But, it's just sort of amazing that this is all happening on this week where a Jewish club happens to be hosting a tournament. There were all the press conferences with, like Rory McIlroy, for example, was the two-time champion of the Canadian Open, two-time defending champion. All the questions with him were about, are you upset that you didn't take the LIV money? What does this mean? And all that stuff. So It's going to be the spotlight's going to be on it. We'll be there. And I should say that
I promise you, we'll be the
we
ones
are covering the Canadian Open again.
We'll be the ones to ask Rory McIlroy enough about LIV. Do you know that this is a Jewish club? Is that a thing that you are aware of, or anyone has told you?
Yeah, that's right. We'll be the only ones asking questions just about, are you familiar with this club? Have you been to any bar mitzvahs here?
Exactly.
Things like that. Would you like to come to a bar mitzvah here?
I'm definitely gonna. We talked about bar mitzvahs at Oakdale with Dan Rappaport a few months ago on this podcast. Barstool Golf dude, and I'm planning on certainly asking Toronto Jewish golfer Ben Silverman at the tournament. If he had been to any bar mitzvahs at Oakdale, because I'm guessing the answer is yes.
Yeah. Just to end this on a positive note, Gabe, you have played Oakdale before. I have not. You've played it a few times. You have a family member who's a member. Any good Oakdale memories you can share? Anything that people watching on TV should look forward to, or
yes,
anything you want to share about the club?
Absolutely. So it's a very, very difficult golf course. It's got a lot of history. Somewhat related, if anyone is a fan of the television show Suits, most of the golf episodes of Suits were filmed at Oakdale. Starred Gabriel Macht, Jewish actor. Got to have Gabe solidarity between me and him. And he's certainly been to Oakdale before, at least to film golf scenes of his television show.
That's cool. I feel like Gabriel Macht is a real under the radar Jewish actor.
Yeah.
But I get a lot of Suits on TikTok for some reason. I watched the first season and then didn't continue.
I mean, this is a really Jewish story, but I met Gabriel Macht once, and all I said to him was, "Hey, my name's Gabe too," and he went, "How about that?" and shook my hand at a Paul Simon concert in Toronto.
That all checks out.
Yeah, it was very Jewish. Like the moment itself was just very quick. Like we were sort of in line together to leave the Paul Simon concert.
If anyone would like a special bonus episode where I just break down the new Paul Simon record, which I've been listening to more or less on repeat since it came out, feel free to write in and we'll ask the Canadian Jewish News for a spot on one of the other cultural feeds. Moving on to some other Jewish sports news. Not much to report in terms of the French Open. Most of the Jewish athletes who were there sort of didn't make it past the second or third round. Alina Svitolina, who
she was doing
continues to have unconfirmed Jewish ancestry. Like every attempt I do make at researching this is just like unconfirmed, and maybe we need someone who reads Ukrainian to help us with this and do some deep digging.
We should reach out to Lawrence Applebaum. If I see him this week, I'm gonna talk about it. He's a tennis guy. He'll know.
Yeah.
He'll know for sure.
But she made the quarterfinals, so that's something. Otherwise, not much going on there from a Jewish angle. Hockey and basketball we've talked about before. There's 4 straight games starting tonight between basketball and hockey taking place in South Florida.
That's pretty Jewish.
A relatively
lot of Jews
relatively
can
Jewish
go to
area.
that one.
So that's exciting, but not a lot of Jewish participation in the NBA or NHL finals this year. One other thing I wanted to mention was that unfortunately we heard news today that the wrestler, the Iron Sheik, died. The Iron Sheik, not Jewish, but
he was a big friend of the Jews.
Yeah, Khosrow Vaziri, who's sort of played this sort of larger than life. I mean, he's a wrestler, so that comes with the territory. But this sort of larger than life, I don't know, sort of representing the Middle East, I would say, during the 1980s. Is that a fair way to put it?
I think so. Just generally
sort of anti-American, pro-Russia, pro-Iran. He himself is Iranian. We say he wasn't Jewish, but part of the way that he's become sort of known to a generation of both wrestling fans and non-wrestling fans is through the Twitter account that he, was associated with, I guess is the right way to put it. The Twitter account that was sort of under his name and ostensibly from him, but I think understood to not be him. And I think for people in the know or people in Toronto, wrestling fans, knew that the people behind this were Paige and Gian Megan, aka the Megan Boys,
who are his managers.
Who are his managers, and I think his sort of I think what I read was that their dad and he were best friends. Like he was sort of honorary uncle, someone they grew up with, and sort of created this Twitter character, I guess. Like it was an extension of the Iron Sheik character from when he was wrestling, but it was in a new Twitter version. And so Paige and Gian I think this is sort of funny because I'm explaining this to anyone in the Toronto area will absolutely know who they are, and anyone outside of the Toronto area who's not a wrestling fan
or
will
a bar mitzvah DJ.
Yeah, so they are these sort of like bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah kings of Toronto, and they have been for a long time. Like about 20 odd years ago, they came up to Jewish summer camps for the summer and became characters themselves, like almost taking on wrestling personas. Mm-hmm. I would say was basically their strategy. They've remained fixtures in the local wrestling and promotion scene. They have their fingers in a lot of pies. I mean, I'm not saying anything that people don't know who live in Toronto, that they're real. They're real successful entrepreneurs.
Yeah, big mockers. And they're real mockers.
And they've been behind the Iron Sheik Twitter account. So I don't know what their plans are for it now that the actual Iron Sheik has passed away. I would assume that it'll have to wind up in some respect, but I don't know.
One other, I mean, it's worth mentioning. There is a, two more Jewish connections to the Iron Sheik. He, before his pro wrestling career, was a very successful Olympic wrestler. He never competed at his own Olympics, but he was sort of that style of wrestling, amateur wrestling, for a long time. He was a coach on the U.S. team during the Munich Olympics, which, as we know, has sort of a tragic Jewish connection. Well, he sort of kept his career going for a long time with regular appearances on the Howard Stern show, which is a very, obviously a very Jewish New York guy, Howard Stern. And they were close friends as well. So he's sort of had a long professional career, being close and working with Jewish people, proudly Jewish people, for a long time. And, from all accounts, he was a really wonderful guy.
Right. Paige and Gian also, I believe, put together a documentary about the Sheik a couple years ago. That sort of, talked about his legacy, and just a guy with a really interesting career. So sad to see that he had passed away. Gabe, one other story that's really caught the attention, I think, of a lot of Jewish soccer fans around the world is that Israel, who has only made one regular World Cup,
they're having a real kickabout.
Yeah, they qualified for the 2023 FIFA U20 World Cup. This is the best players in the world who are under 20 years old. It was originally going to be held in Indonesia. We talked about this on our last podcast, that Indonesia gave up the rights to host it because they didn't want to host Israel. So maybe that's a little sign of things to come with Saudi Arabia's continued involvement in sports. Sidebar. Anyways, Israel made it to the Cup finals.
The semifinals. They have made it to the semifinals.
Well, sorry, I mean the Cup finals is like the tournament.
Yes, the tournament itself.
Yes, they qualified. They went 1-1-1 in the group stage, beating Japan in their last match. That was the last thing that hadn't happened before we taped our last interview. Before we taped our last episode. And since then, they've won their round of 16 and quarterfinal game. They beat Uzbekistan 1-0, and they beat Brazil. The soccer powerhouse of the world, 3-2 in the quarterfinals.
It was sort of
pretty unbelievable.
A truly huge day for Israeli soccer. I'm gonna right now quote Jonathan Cohen, the television announcer on the Hebrew language broadcast. This is translated to what Jonathan Cohen in Israel said into the broadcast. As the time ran up, he said, quote, "You will tell of this night to your children, and they will tell it to their children, and they will tell it to their grandchildren." Wow. Which is quite a, I think you'd have to be a particularly big Israeli soccer fan for that to be true. However, the day Israel upset Brazil is a momentous day for sports in the country.
Yeah. And we should say this is not exclusively a Jewish team. In the last game, there were 2 goals scored, one by Hamza Shibli and one by Anand Khalili, both of whom are Arab Israelis. And the third goal was scored by Dor Turgeman, who is a Jewish Israeli. So this is a mixed team.
Dor Turgeman is a 10 out of 10 Israeli name.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a mixed team. I think it's a team that Israel is having a lot of pride in right now. As we are taping this, they're gearing up for the semifinal match against Uruguay. So by the time you're listening to this, that depending on when you're listening to this, that may or may not have happened. If they win, they'd be facing Italy, the winner of Italy and South Korea in the finals. On June 11th, which is this Sunday, or they'd be in the third place game on Sunday. So they will have one more match after this, regardless.
And
it's a huge accomplishment.
Absolutely, this is it. The 3 teams left in have all been recent World Cup semifinalists or champions.
Right, exactly.
Uruguay.
These are real powerhouses.
Real power. Yeah. All sort of the best countries in the world at soccer. Korea is just getting better after being, breaking out 20 years ago when they hosted the World Cup. Italy is Italy, of course, and Uruguay has had 1 World Cups before. They've had an incredibly long and successful soccer time. So see if Israel can hang with the big boys.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the exciting part as well is that, this is the U20 World Cup. So this is these guys, the three people who I mentioned who scored are, I think 18, 18, and 20. Yep. Or 18, 18, and 19. Turgeman's only 19 years old. These are guys who are, just coming up through the Israeli club system. Probably will have some, move to a European team at some point.
Yep.
In the next few years as they get older. And this is going to be these people can be the core of an Israeli national team that is looking to compete at the World Cup, the mature World Cup, and with a 48 team World Cup, which I believe is what's planned starting at the next World Cup in 2026. There is more opportunity to win a few games here and there in qualifying and make it in, and that
totally.
As I said, Israel's only made 1 World Cup before.
Some of those matches are going to be in Canada. Thing. It's actually very interesting. There was a great article in the JTA in the last couple of days. It's in about how the tournament is currently in Argentina, which is a country with a very large Jewish population.
Sure.
And to have a South American country versus Israel is a big battle between all of those. As Uruguay is now the last South American country left, so you have continental pride and you cheer for them. But you can't choose between cheering for Israel and cheering for Uruguay, your homeland. It's truly, or your ancestral homeland and your current homeland. It's really quite spectacular.
Sure, must be a tough one for all the Jews of Montevideo.
Yeah, I mean there are some, and Jews of Argentina, absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah. It's going to be great. The game, this is coming out. The game is taking place on Thursday the 8th at 2:30 p.m. Argentina time, which I think is Central Time in North America, and in Europe it'll be on at about 8 or 8:30.
Yeah, that's right. So we wish Team Israel luck, and hopefully we can report on their U20 World Cup championship next time we do this podcast. Before we get to our interview with Mark and Molly, we just want to mention that this podcast is brought to you by the BetStamp app, which is helping thousands of people win at sports betting for free. BetStamp is a way to see and track odds on different sports bet. There's a number of different apps that are available in Ontario now, and this allows you to see the best bets. So, Gabe, if you want to put some money on the Vegas Golden Knights to win Game 3 tomorrow, which they probably will, this would let you see the different odds at different books, and you could select the best odds to get the best return on your investment.
So as to sort of optimize, you're saying that if I was to bet at one place, say I think the Golden Knights are going to win, there'd be different odds from one app to another. I'd make a different amount of money depending on who I'm talking to.
Exactly. So different sports books set their odds in different ways, and BetStamp allows you to sort of see it as a grid, track it historically, and record your bets as well. So we encourage everyone to check out BetStamp. You can find the website at betstamp.app, and you can download it for your iPhone or Android. And if you use the promotion code Menschwarmers, they will let you know that we sent you their way, and they will give you some free offer money as well to bet with some of the local casinos in Ontario. So let's go now to our interview with Mark and Molly. I'm joined today by Mark Sadowski, the immediate past president of Oakdale Golf Club, and Molly Jagroop, the general manager of Oakdale Golf Club. Thanks so much for joining me today, guys.
Nice to be here.
So you guys are both here today because there is a very special event coming up at Oakdale, which is the 2023 Canadian Open. We're talking on June 1st. The Open starts in 9 days, I guess, in 7 days. The tournament will officially begin. But based on what I've read and talking to you, it sounds like, this isn't just a 4-day event that comes and goes. It's a huge undertaking and a huge process. So Mark, I wanted to start by talking to you a little bit. You were the president when the bidding or organization for the tournament began. Can you tell me a little bit about that process? How did that begin? What was involved on your end in terms of getting the club involved and getting into the PGA?
Well, I think there's a great story to the origins of this event at Oakdale, which involved two members, Mark Lowry and Jordan Klein, who were watching the Canadian Open on television, both in their own homes on the television. And Mark Lowry says, "Why doesn't Oakdale host the Canadian Open?" And both are Mark is our club captain, both exceptional golfers in their own right. And Jordan says, "Oh, no, our course would be too easy." Mark says, "Well, I was at Royal Melbourne in Australia. They took their 27 holes and they made a composite routing." Jordan says, "That sounds great. Do you mind if I maybe reach out to Golf Canada?" And that is the beginning of how this actually came about. And once it got traction, certainly from a Golf Canada perspective, we have an amazing venue for them in terms of holding an event, access, all of that. And the president prior to me, Sam Winberg, and the general manager prior to Molly started the negotiations and the discussions, and they got it to a point where my tenure began, and it was time to go to the members. And we took our members to the two town halls with Golf Canada, allowed members to express their concerns, their questions, their everything that they wanted to know about what it would mean for us to host the Open. And subsequently, we had a membership vote in which we had around 73% of our members voting in favor, which for Golf Canada was the highest that they'd received from other clubs. And that's really how this whole event got going at Oakdale.
And I should say that Oakdale has signed up both to host this year's 2023 Open and also the 2026 Open, if I understand. So this was that part of the commitment as well to host two times?
It was. For Golf Canada, they were looking to create a rotation, not unlike other events. And so that was part of their strategy, was to build sort of this idea of it returning to host clubs. Clearly, there's all kinds of efficiencies, practical and otherwise, but that was how this was originally framed and structured and voted on by our members.
Right. And now switching gears a bit, a question for you, Molly, is, as I said, this isn't just a 4-day undertaking. You're the general manager of the club. What's been involved, I would say, the last few months or the last year, however long it's been, of getting the course ready, getting the venue ready, getting everything in place? What actually has to go on to make a golf tournament of this size happen?
Sure, James. And as Mark said earlier, this is sort of like years in the making,
Sure.
Yes, we spoke to Golf Canada and we got, their agreement to host the event. But from a staffing standpoint, there's a lot of planning and, just getting the course ready, getting the club ready. We have access to expertise such as security expertise, agronomic expertise, where, the PGA, etc., they will come to the club, work very closely with our superintendent, with our golf professional, myself. Food and beverage is a huge component of this tournament.
Sure.
So working with our chefs, just building and planning all the menus and the clubhouse and the operations director, exactly what the club should look like, all that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of planning that goes into this. But it's great for the staff as well, because they now are privy to expertise that they would, under normal circumstances, probably not have a chance to be privy to. So this is great for them as well. It raised their profile, within the industry, their peers, etc. So yeah, lots and lots of work and planning that goes into it. It's by no means over. This is the home stretch for us, so again, just paying close attention to what's happening this week. But yes, it's a bit of a mayhem around here. But again, it's controlled chaos is what I would like to call it. A ton of stuff happening everywhere. We have our ears to the ground at all times, just making sure that things are running as smoothly as they possibly can. And next week, I imagine it'll be completely out of our control. So,
You just do everything. You set everything up. You make everything perfect, and then you just let it run
That's
and
exactly
let it
right.
happen.
It's everything leading up to tournament week, and then James, I'm certain that week there's nothing that we would have control over. It's basically all the work that you've done leading up to that. You would only hope that you give it your very best shot. So.
Do you have an idea of how many people are expected on any given day of the tournament? I guess Saturday or Sunday will be the biggest days. How many people are expected at the venue?
Yeah,
or at the course?
spoke to Golf Canada about this, and we probably would have about 20,000 people at a time here, wow. 20 to 30, the latter half of the week. But yeah, the earlier part may not be as busy, but for sure. And we also are hosting the concerts on the Friday night and the Saturday night at the club. So I imagine those 2 days. A number of people that are coming to view the golf tournament will also stay for the concert. So, and then there are those that come only for the concert. So yeah, there'll be a lot of foot traffic, I'm certain. And the concerts are that's being held on the range for the golf course. So
okay,
so it's all right on property.
So a slightly bigger event than say a 300-person bar mitzvah, which I think was the last time I was at Oakdale.
That would be a fair statement, yes.
So, question for either of you or Mark, maybe you can speak to this. You mentioned Oakdale's a 27-hole course. It's made of 3 different 9 holes, and from my understanding, they're relatively short by sort of championship standards. So what was done? What were the processes, or what was the planning for putting together an 18-hole course? Sort of like an amalgam of what I understand. It's a few holes from each of the 9 holes, basically, to make 18.
Well, actually, it's the routing, the composite routing. We have 3 9s. We have our Thompson 9, our Hominick 9, and our Knudsen 9. And the first 9, the front for the tournament, will be a composite of the Thompson and Hominick 18 holes.
Okay.
The back 9 will be entirely our Knudsen, or our third 9. And so that's how, and as you can appreciate, the routing, which, I mean, it's fascinating to sort of go through the process. But in addition to the golf experience for the members, the Golf Canada and PGA has to consider traffic flow. So where are the people going to go? How are the players going to get where they have to get to? And all of those sorts of things were all considerations. Oakdale will be the longest of the Canadian Opens to date.
Oh, wow.
From our understanding. So in fact, we are close to or around 7,400 yards.
Right. Okay. And I take it that means it's a pretty different golf course for members. They won't really be familiar if they're walking around the grounds with all the sponsor tents and grandstands up and things like that, except on the back 9. But the first 9 is going to be a real rearranging of things on the golf course.
So for the last year, we've actually been celebrating the impending event by putting posts on all the holes. So our members will actually appreciate the routing, because when they're playing number 1 of Thompson, that's the number 1 of the event. Well, the number 3 of Thompson is the hole number 2, and so on and so on. So our holes are well marked, and members, I think, by this point, who are obviously familiar with the property, are very familiar now with the new routing. And we've had a couple of member events where they got to play the routing that the pros will play from the tips, as we call it, the very back tees. So they've had a taste of what our course will look like for the pros.
Right. So on that topic, I mean, from what I understand, a tournament can have a long-lasting impact on the course itself. The grass has to regrow. You have to give up the week, obviously, when the tournament's actually happening, in terms of giving up time.
Sure.
What was the feeling from members, or either during the vote or in the lead up to it? Was there a feeling of wanting to show off the course? Was there any sense of wanting to show off this special place that's been a haven for Jewish members for the last many decades?
Right.
Was that part of what inspired the members here to give up that space to the Canadian Open?
I would say, in truth, it's very mixed. Oakdale's never been about showing itself off. We have had golf events that, such as the amateur Ontario amateur event year after year, out of a sense of duty to golf and tradition at Oakdale. But we've never really promoted ourselves, never sought course ratings. and so forth. So you have quite a mix. You obviously have the ardent and passionate golfers who are excited to see how far they hit versus Rory. So they want to see
right.
Rory play their course. You have other golfers who are nervous and apprehensive about what will it mean to the course. You have 100,000 people trampling your course for 4 days. What's that going to look like when it's over? So I think members were really ran the spectrum of feelings and concerns, and we embraced that. Right, the two town halls were intended to get a very fair representation of members who are comfortable holding the event. So it was not the prestige as much as one might think that would drive a certain course. It was more a sense of it was time. Oakdale has a lot of historic connections to golf in Canada. Not only players like George Knudson and Will Hominick and now Bob Boschman, right, and so forth, but really it was. We've had events. We've had people play who are we had a De Maurier event many years ago. It wasn't really about showing off. Having said that, now that we've embraced this, we obviously want to present our course for the beauty that it is and that we appreciate. So it's a Stanley Thompson course. For golfers, that will mean something. Sure. Our back nine is a Robbie Robinson course who emulated Thompson, but this is his coming out party because he's never had a Canadian Open featuring his work.
Oh, wow.
So those are the kinds of things that have sort of all blended together as part of how people felt. And again, we have members who don't even golf who are giving up their club. So we had to be considerate of everyone.
Sure. And are the members being involved this weekend? Are they volunteering? Are there people involved in different ways?
So there, members have done two things which we expected them to do. One is they bought up the seats that could be allocated to us. They're excited to showcase in that regard, have their clients and their friends and their family be on site and witness history for Oakdale. Right. And I think the second thing is we've seen an incredible upsurge in volunteerism. Many of our members are co-chairing, and we have two fabulous co-chairs, Tammy Brown, who's a past president, Richard Paulin, who has been a long-standing board member and member of the club, both of whom have under them a series, probably 15 or so committees with chairs of our volunteers or co-chairs of our with our volunteers. And then we have the children and the grandchildren and even some of the parents who are volunteering in an array of roles throughout the week. So for those who have embraced the event, they have embraced it, very, very, excited.
Wholeheartedly. Yeah, that's great. Do you feel like this is a chance to sort of grow the game, I guess, a little bit internally in terms of getting your members, and their kids and grandkids involved? Is this a way to, continue the tradition within the club and get those people going?
Well, I think Oakdale is a very unique venue and club, and to sort of answer that a little bit, sort of stepping back. So Oakdale has a very unique membership program called a legacy program, where grandparents, great-grandparents, parents, children, somewhere in your lineage joins the club. And that provides the next generation an opportunity to join the club without initiation fees, which is very unique, I think, anywhere. And as a result, we have a quite a unique situation where we are a multi-generational club. And so the thing about this event is that families will, and everywhere from grandparents, parents, children will experience this together. And I think that's another aspect of our mission, which is to be family focused. I think in terms of growing the game, there's sort of the day-to-day things that we do very well that invite members to because it can be very intimidating for new members or new to golf individuals, where we have programs and opportunities where we expose them and give them that sort of safe opportunity to try golf and then learn golf and then grow and so forth. So it really is slightly different in terms of answering your question about growing the game for our club. But if I can just add to that, we do think we're growing the game for Canada. and that we are almost 100-year-old club. We have a very welcoming nature. We're very, very community focused, so much so that we've actually been the first private club to have the First Tee program, which is a golf program that's North American, I believe, that invites children from all economic backgrounds to come out and try golf. And Oakdale has I think we are in our second year of inviting First Tee to Oakdale, and we're very proud of that.
Can you talk a little bit more of that, Molly, if you know a little bit more about that? What's that program, and how does it encourages diversity in terms of people playing golf from non-traditional golf backgrounds, let's say?
Absolutely, James. And that's exactly as Mark said. So we're in our second year, and we're amongst the first club in Ontario that actually embraced the program. And those that know anything about First Tee, it's more than just golf. It's learning about life skills, etc. So we have some of our professionals and a few of our members who provide that service to the local community. And so we have a lot of the community, younger kids coming into the program, etc. So absolutely, it's been embraced, and it's something that the members are very proud of doing, and we will continue to do so.
Right. For either of you guys, is there anything that you're specifically excited to see some of the really long hitters on tour? You talked about Rory, like seeing him play. I mean, obviously he's defending his title this year. I think that's really exciting. He's
second time. He's a
two-time champion now, yeah, but obviously one of the best golfers in the world. Is there anything in particular you're excited to see them do? Is there something you want to see them hit that you've never quite been able to hit yourself, but maybe a pro can?
Well, I wouldn't be a good example of one of those long hitters, but clearly, I think there's obviously certain areas around the club where members are hoping to see the world's best golfers land their ball, breaking perhaps new ground, perhaps looking at a course record which has been around for many, many years. I think they're overall very excited to see how the pros play our course, how they plot and plan and play our 18 holes that they'll be on. So I think there's
is there a course record? Is there a course record for the 18 that they'll be playing, or is that sort of a new course, quote unquote? Is there a course record for just any 18? How does that work?
That's a new routing, right, Mark? I don't.
Yeah. Right. So there's no record for this routing per se. So I think that's I'm sure that whoever holds the record will be able to defend that by virtue of saying, well, it wasn't the 18 that I played.
Right.
I just mean that I think that's exciting that someone probably on Thursday is going to set if someone shoots a 63 or something like that on Thursday, it could be a new course record for that 18. Certainly, we'll see it again in 3 years.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that is interesting in watching how they prepare the course is they have challenges for the members by where they put the tee box, where they put the pin, or not members, but players rather, and therefore challenge them to either, go for a long ball or manage the course a little bit more conservatively as they approach the tee. I think there's lots of that, which will be very exciting.
You played.
Well, I think we're gonna. Sorry, go ahead, Molly.
I was gonna say, Mark, you played a routing on a simulator. How was that? Did you find that fun?
Yes, it was a lot of fun. It was certainly, it's a lot more fun to be out on the course, but it was an interesting experience. Molly's alluding to the fact, James, that as part of all of this is that the Oakdale course is now available to be played on a simulator. So
that's wonderful.
Which is very exciting. So I happened to be there when they were installing it. They asked me to sort of play a couple holes, and it was a lot of fun to watch them play. Or to see our course sort of on video. And as one of our pros mentioned, he said, imagine people in Australia will be playing Oakdale. And that was it.
Right. Is that available at Oakdale, or it's like part of the software that it can be for anything that has a simulator now?
Yes, it's part of the software.
It's part of the software, but it'll be available widely for the way that all simulators provide software. It'll be available to anyone, anywhere. Who uses
routing that?
this simulator technology.
That's great. That's exciting, and I'm sure it'll be exciting for your members in January or February. Those who haven't escaped down to Florida or somewhere warmer, smart folk. Anyways, I think we'll wrap it up there. But I want to thank you both so much for joining us, taking some time out of what I'm sure is a busy schedule, especially as this tournament gets underway. But I hope I'll see you both next week, and wish you both the best of luck with everything. I think this is going to be a great event, and really excited for you, for Oakdale, and for everybody.
Thank you, James.
Well, thanks again to Mark Sadowski and Molly Jagroop for joining us for the interview. It was really nice to chat with them and hear more about what's going on behind the tournament. I'm Gabe. I'm really excited to be there. We're going to go on Friday and check things out. Sort of get to pretend to be journalists for a day.
It's going to be great. I'm really fascinated to see how, to learn, what we've learned in this interview about what it takes to run a golf tournament, and then watch it all come together.
Plus we get so much swag.
I'm in it for the free
a lot of free swag, a lot of free swag, a lot of free Diet Cokes from being media. The PGA certainly treats you well. Before we go, I wanted to mention a
they have that PIF money now, so maybe they'll have slightly larger containers of Coke.
Fountain Diet Coke.
What's the glass bottle Diet Coke?
Yeah. I wanted to give a shout out to listener Peter Sevitt, who sent in an article that was published on BBC Sport about Rudi Ball. He was a ice hockey star who both represented and survived Nazi Germany, a Jewish German hockey player who played for Germany in the 1930s, survived essentially, and it's a very interesting story. It was part of the 1936 German Olympic team. And so thanks to Peter for sending that out. We've talked a little bit before when we had Andrew Marinas on about the 36 Olympics, but I don't think we talked about Rudi Ball. So interesting article on the BBC that we recommend you check out. And, to all our listeners out there, if you ever come across something interesting, Jews in sports world, feel free to send it their way. Hit us up on Twitter. Always interested in reading different things, and this is an interesting long read, a good deep dive on the history of it.
And we've talked on this podcast sort of at length in our early episodes about Helen Meyer, who was in a very, very similar situation in the 1936 fencing team, and sort of a lot of the Jewish community shunned her afterwards for a while, and I think she struggled with for a long time because she was not, she has strongly hinted, without coming out and saying it, that she performed under threat of violence to her family and herself. If she didn't stay on Team Germany, even though she was Jewish. So, Rudi was in a similar situation, and I can't imagine what a Jewish athlete in 1935 Germany would be going through.
Yeah, the article goes into the fact that he basically struck a deal to save his family if he returned to play on the ice hockey team, because he was considered, a critical player to play on the team, and other players on the team refused to play unless he was going to be part of the team. So definitely worth checking out. We can post a link in our show notes, maybe, so you can check it out. Until next time, we will probably have some, ongoing Twitter coverage.
Stay on social media, folks. We're there.
David Lipsky and Ben Silverman are the two Jewish players playing in the Canadian Open this year. David Lipsky had a really great finish at the Memorial last week. He was in first going into the final day and didn't have a great Sunday, but he still managed to tie for 12th place, which is a great, one of his best performances this year. And he's going to be at the Canadian Open, so we'll see how he does. Ben Silverman, sort of, local guy,
local hero.
Been sort of local hero. He won on the Corn Ferry Tour not long ago. So, hopefully has some experience at Oakdale. Maybe you can show people, around the course, and then in the city, maybe where to get the good bagels. So hopefully we can catch up with Ben too. And just, we'll try to keep up with them on Twitter and what's going on.
If you have any questions for us to bother Lawrence Applebaum with as well, happy to do it. I'll be tracking him down.
Yeah. But as always, we are produced by the Canadian Jewish News. Our executive producer is Michael Freeman. You can find our podcast and all our content on the Canadian Jewish News website, thecjn.ca. And you should like and subscribe to this podcast wherever you get it. And you should follow us on Twitter, where we continue to be, for some reason, We are at Menschwarmers, giving you all the Jewish sports news as it happens, wherever it happens. Until next time, thanks so much for listening.